Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's presentation as part of the Industry Insight webinar series. The topic this time is Marketing Your Firm with Online Reviews. Speaking today will be Tyler Roberts and Rob Mayfield. Tyler Roberts serves as a Regional Director of Sales for Podium, a SaaS platform that helps businesses interact with their customers through SMS text messaging and influence purchase decisions by streamlining the collection and management of online reviews. Tyler received his BS in Business Management from Brigham Young University and is experienced in helping businesses manage their customer experience programs and digital marketing efforts. In his free time, he enjoys skiing and spending time with his wife doing various outdoor activities. Rob Mayfield heads up product marketing at Podium, a SaaS platform that helps local businesses interact with their customers through SMS text messaging and influence purchase decisions by streamlining collection and management of online reviews. Mayfield is very experienced in both customer acquisition marketing and internal customer marketing from his time at Instructure and Podium. Mayfield has a BS in marketing and a minor in political science from BYU. The presentation today will be followed by a Q&A. Please enter your questions into the question box in the webinar panel on the right side of your screen. All questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. We're recording this webinar and we'll be sending a video and a follow-up email in a few days. We'll also post the video on our blog over at www.lawtechnologytoday.org. Thank you all for joining us. We'll now begin the webinar.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for that intro. Yeah, we're super excited to give this webinar. We're grateful that we can be able to do that with all you here. And, hopefully there's some things we'll share today that you'll be able to take away and really, implement. Now, a few quick things. Like you said, we want this to be as interactive as possible, right? We want you to ask as many questions. Now, we did say, right, that we'll hold questions till the end or in the Q&A section. However, the nice thing about GoToWebinars, you can type those in at any time, right? So if you see a slide, we don't want you to forget your question. You can go ahead and type those in, and then we'll try to get to all of them. If we're not able to get to your questions during the presentation, yeah, don't worry. We'll make sure we follow up with you on a one-to-one basis and make sure that we can answer that question for you. And again, you can do that just by typing that into the GoToWebinar control panel. It usually populates to the right side of your screen, and you can just go under the questions tab. Then the other thing I would like to say before we get started about our webinars here at Podium that we tend to give, they're 100% educational, right? We're not here to talk about our products at all. And these are things that are very actionable, right? These are things that you can take away and start implementing into your law firm right now, right? These aren't just things that you'll think, oh, at a high level, this is nice. Maybe if I had more marketing budget, or, if I had a guy that, really understood these things, that we could do these things. No, but these are things that you could really implement in your firm right today. So let's go ahead and go through that agenda. So like we said, we'll talk about why online reviews matter to your firm, how you can increase, how online reviews can increase the word of mouth for your firm, how it's not going to just only help your online presence, but really just make it so you're seeing more and get more people in through the front door. We'll talk about the top tips for determining, exactly which sites you should be focusing on, right? There's thousands of online review sites today, and people don't really realize that. You might think of, some specific ones off the top of your head, but there really are everywhere. And so which ones should you really be focusing on? And lastly, and probably the best part of this presentation is we're not going to just tell you, why these things are awesome, but we're actually going to give you the best practices for how you can actually collect new reviews. And not just a few, but we really want to, be showing you how you can collect hundreds of reviews. So let's talk about how, reviews really influence the entire client journey, right? It's not just the way clients choose when they're making the decision, right, of deciding which firm to have represent them, right? Now, let's work backwards from this. So 84% of consumers that their buying decisions are influenced by online reviews. So that's obviously something that you're not going to be very surprised about, right? That you already know that that's going to be made they're going to be influenced by these online reviews when they're doing their research about, which firm they should actually have represent them. But the other thing that you might not think about is that consumers today are trained to use online reviews also to find out about, new products and services, right? So that's over the far left. 61% of consumers use reviews to learn about new products. So the thing is that it's influencing the entire customer journey, not just from being chosen, but from being found. And there's also a huge local SEO component of that for being found. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then there's this last stat that's awesome. 84% of consumers trust online reviews just as much as personal recommendations, right? Now, I would say, back in the day, the way people would find a service to use or a law firm to have represent them would be they would talk to their friends and family, right? And it's not that they still don't do that today, that they still do that all the time. The difference is, though, is that they trust people that they don't know, random people online just as much. And if we were to break down that 84% stat, you'd see that that number is even higher amongst millennials. And even some millennials might trust those reviews more than personal recommendations because they have this whole crowd idea, right? That where the opinion of several other people that have several different, hundreds of different experiences are going to have more of an accurate representation of how a firm really is rather than one person's viewpoint because they might have just happened to have like an easy case or something like that, right? So it'll really give them a proper representation. All right, now let's talk about how, online reviews really just impact those words of mouth. So your clients are your best salespeople.
Yeah, and if I might chime in here, what we've noticed specifically in the legal field is most firms agree that every case, if they could choose, would be a referral, right? Whether it comes from a former client or from a chiropractor or for personal injury situations or other medical providers, right? Those are usually the clients that you want to take care of the most. So what we've noticed, especially in, like I said, in the legal field, we want to make the modern referral here more, I guess, transparent on local sites. So we want to make sure that when people do find you in some of these local searches, like was mentioned in with millennials doing searches on their mobile devices, we want to make sure that they are hearing about positive experiences, not only from their friends and family, but from these online sites that they're checking every day, like Facebook or Google, things like that. So we want to make sure that your cases that come through the door that maybe aren't from the typical channels, whether they are from Facebook or Google, we want to make sure they're just as valuable as those referred cases.
Now, for those of you on here, you're on this webinar in the first place, not just because you're practicing law, right, but because you're really trying to build your practice or help it out. And so as a business owner, right, or somebody who's trying to manage this for your firm, you really understand, and you'll know that referrals convert at a much higher level. And that's true, I do marketing, that's true for every industry, right? People will convert higher when they're a personal referral than any other thing. But what people don't understand is that word of mouth, modern word of mouth, is online reviews, right? It's essentially people recommending your business even though they don't know anyone. So online reviews, those sites, they're everywhere, right? 58% of consumers look at online review sites at least weekly. 87% of consumers have access to either Google, Yelp, or Facebook right on their smartphones, meaning they're not having to go and log into a desktop, right, to find these sites. They're pulled up everywhere.
Something that's interesting about this and that I want to bring up is it obviously depends on your practice area, right, where we want to focus these efforts. For, as I mentioned before, like plaintiffs' personal injury firms, a lot of times they're just by the nature of the practice types, they're finding a lot of people on Google or Facebook, and so we want to make sure we're capturing we're capturing reviews where they need to be.
Yeah, later in the presentation, we'll go, way a little bit more in depth on exactly which sites should you guys be focusing on. But the thing that you need to realize is that back in the day, review sites when they were first birthed were like specific places, like if I want to read online reviews, I'm going to go to Yelp, right? Yelp.com. And that's where I'm going to find reviews. Or even, if we go even further back, in the newspaper, there was a specific section, right, for a guy who would do reviews about restaurants or whatever service, or the review of a play, right, where they really originate from. But the thing is, online review sites are everywhere. And why? Because there are thousands of online listings. So anywhere there's an online listing, anywhere somebody could find any information about your business, there's going to be reviews associated with that. So making sure you're managing those is really important. Now, a rule of marketing is that for every additional step somebody has to take, the less likely they are to do that thing. So making sure that you're seen where people are going to find you first is really important. So before somebody's going to find your actual website, what are they going to find first? They're going to find an online listing, and that's most likely going to be Google. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So reviews are a two-way street. So all of us today use online reviews. All of us, everyone on this call, I imagine, has probably used Amazon before, right? And the thing about Amazon is it's kind of trained us to use online reviews across all industries. Because what do? Let's say you find a product you like, but you want to make sure it's good. You want to make sure it's what you actually think it is, especially because if it's online, you can't physically touch that thing. You can't really actually see it. So, is it going to show up and it's going to be 3 sizes too small? Is it going to be, made out of some crappy material? So what you do, you go through those reviews and you scan through to actually read about it. So all of us use online reviews all the time, but how many of us actually leave reviews? Not very many. But the thing is, so we think as business owners, because of that, it's really hard to get people to leave your reviews. But 77% of consumers, when we did the survey, said they would be willing to leave a review if we just simply ask them, right? So simply asking your clients to leave your reviews is going to be a lot, it's going to convert a little bit higher than you think, and there's good ways to do that. We'll talk about it a little bit more later if you stay till the end. But the nice thing is that it's not as hard as you might think it might be. Now, online reviews are going to help you be a lot more visible in online searches, and the reason why is because online reviews are a key factor that makes up Google's local search ranking, right? Local SEO. And that's because near me searches have been growing rapidly. So people, again, like I said, you used to have to go to your desktop, fire up the old Google and then type it in, and first you even had to go to google.com. But today, well, if you have an Android device, you're already always logged into Google. You just ask your phone, hey Siri, hey Google, whatever, look this up for me, and then it's right then and there. You're not having to go anywhere. It's the easiest process ever. And because of that, though, it's affecting local SEO because local SEO is dependent on those mobile devices, right? Today's consumer, they value convenience over, relationships or over loyalty. People, we live in a convenience economy. That's why we have these sites like Amazon doing so well, right? We don't care about businesses that we've been doing business with forever. We care about what's the easiest thing. What's the easiest thing? Well, it's the first thing you can find on your phone, right? It's not something where you have to go through more effort to do that. And then once you find that place, the reviews is just a nice way to make sure that it's a legitimate business, right? So this is all because all these things I've been talking about, why local SEO is so important, is because of something called micro moments. So here over at Podium, we're financially backed by Google. And so because of that, we have a nice relationship with them. And Google recently coined this term of what a micro moment is. Now, what's a micro moment? A micro moment is the moment a person, right, wants to know something, they want to go somewhere, or they want to buy or decide to do something, right? So that's, for example, I just got into a car accident, right? My neck hurts a little bit. I don't know how much this is going to affect my life. And I know, hey, the insurance company's probably not going to be fair with me. I probably should look up a lawyer. So what is that person going to do right in that moment? They're not going to wait a few days or weeks, right, when it might be too late. They're probably going to go right on their phone right then and there and type in, personal injury lawyers near me, right? And then that's what's going to pull up. And so in that micro moment, you want to make sure that you are the one pulling up when they need you there most, right? So here's some way to take advantage of micro moments, right? And I'm gonna let Tyler kind of talk a little bit more about some ways that you're able to take advantage of these micro moments.
Yeah, like was mentioned, we want to make sure you're showing up. Unfortunately, in the legal field, most situations are when someone is looking for representation, they're usually unfortunate. People usually, whether it be a divorce or a car accident, they're not wanting to be in that situation, and so they're in desperate need of help. So we need to make sure that you are showing up when that micro moment is happening. When they express a need, we want to make sure you're there. And so a big part of that is taking advantage of specific searches, or so as an example on this slide here, for your specialty, right? We want to make sure that we're showing up in a search for your city for a specific case type. If you are a DUI attorney, we want to make sure if someone were to do a search of best DUI attorney near me, or top law firm in the area, whether it be general or very specific to a case type, we want to make sure we're taking advantage and showing up in those searches. So we want to double check on all of those and make sure we are knowing how our clients are finding us. Kind of interesting talking with different softwares that work specifically in the legal field. A lot of them keep track of things like lead source, right? Case source. We want to make sure we're knowing how our clients are finding us. We want to make sure we know if they came from a friend, or if they found us on Facebook, or they saw us during a commercial during an NBA game, something like that, right? We want to make sure we're knowing how they're finding us so that we can duplicate what is being successful and kind of explore some more of those options.
A lot of these steps that Tyler was just talking about, these steps to take advantage of micro moments are all going back against that local SEO, right? So there's something I want to explain. So what's the difference between local SEO versus just regular SEO? And I'm sure you've heard that term several times, search engine optimization, right? So SEO would be more of a it would be trying to just, optimize your website or your listing so that people find you when they're doing a very generic organic search. So that would be something like, personal injury law, or, what to do if you get in a car accident, right? And what's that going to pull up? It's going to pull up like a Wikipedia page. It's going to pull up maybe some like very big generalized site, but it's not going to pull up anything that's going to really help you and your practice. So the way to make sure that you pull up when people need you is taking advantage of a local SEO, which is heavily influenced by, their location, but also especially is influenced by their online reviews. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But so a few of these steps, right? So identifying those top mobile searches in your specialty are going to be really important to know, because you're going to want to, add those keywords to your site. Knowing what frequently asked questions. So like if you're a personal injury lawyer, again, like what to do if you get in a car crash, that would be a FAQ you'd want somewhere on your site living, so that you're pulling up for the local SEO.
And one thing I do want to mention here is, talking to law firms all day here at Podium, it is fascinating to me how many marketing departments or owners of firms don't know where they're showing up in searches, where sometimes on a live call with them, I say, hey, is this an accurate search of someone in your field or someone in your area looking for a car accident attorney, whether it's best PI attorney near me or something like that? Say, yeah, that's an accurate search. And then we scroll through and they're on the 4th or 5th page of Google, and they have no idea. They're like, what? I had no idea that was the case. And the light turns on and they realize that they're not getting found on those sites. So if you take nothing else away from this, I'd say just be aware of where you are showing up in these searches and how your search engine optimization is for your field and practice area.
Yeah, so Google really is king. And so if you really want to, be found by people that you don't already have some type of relationship with, where they're actually discovering you for the first time, that's why it's so important that you're optimizing for this local SEO. And the reason why is this underlining stat underneath those 3 tips, right? So 50% of mobile searches result in an in-person visit within 24 hours. That is insane. And the reason why is because people have extremely high buying, right, or deciding intent when they're doing these searches, that half of them are actually going to come in physically to your firm, right? So making sure that if that you're able to pull up means that you're going to get a lot more in-person traffic, right? Or at least a lot more calls, a lot more inquiries, because people have this high intent where they're not just doing this search just to kind of know, just because it's nice, but because they actually plan on acting on that. So let's say you do all these things that we're talking about, right? Or let's say even you have somebody that you hire that oh yeah, these people really know local SEO, right? And they optimize the hell out of your site, right? How do you make sure that once people get to your site, they look good? So take a look at this. 3.3 stars is the minimum star rating consumers on average would consider engaging with. Now, considering that everyone here is in the legal industry, I assume that if we did this specifically for this industry, that stat would be higher, because this is a lot more personal, right? This isn't just, oh yeah, which place should I have do my plumbing? And that's pretty personal, even being in your home, right? A plumber. Or which place should I buy my vehicle? But this is somebody like, who do I trust to represent me, and just off of a first glance. So the other thing is that a lot of law firms are getting, pretty savvy and understanding that, yeah, they need to be collecting a lot of online reviews, and their star ratings are even higher. So I would say that as high as you possibly can get it, for sure at least above a 4.0 star rating, because if you optimize the crap out of your site and you pull up in that local SEO, and I mean, if you don't have a good star rating, you're probably not going to pull up anyways. But if you for some reason would, or you spend all this marketing, and the first time somebody Googles your business, they come across those star ratings and it's not stellar, then that is all for nothing, right? All that marketing budget you just spent just went down the drain because they're not even willing to engage with you because of that.
And a term that's growing more and more popular in Google searches is the word best, which is very interesting because if someone were to say best personal injury attorney near me, what Google does is it automatically applies a filter of 4 stars and above. So if you are at a 3.3, 3.8, 3.9 even, if someone says best attorney near me, you're not even going to be on the list. So something to be aware of if your average star rating on Google is below 4 stars right now.
Yeah, Tyler, that's a really good point because, let's say you start trying to get a handle on these things, right? But even if you have a 4.1 and you're clear down at the bottom of the page, right, of this Google map pack that people are searching through, they're at least on the page if they're typing best, and that percentage, like Tyler has been saying, has been doubling year after year of people searching. That's actually the number one the fastest growing search term right now in Google is people using best before they search the thing. So the reason that's so important is, like you said, you won't even pull up, even in the pack, you won't even show up because it's automatically going to filter you out. So another thing, and this is probably not going to be very surprising, but online reviews really influence purchase decisions, or in this case, they really influence the decision of them, choosing which service or which legal service to use. 82% of consumers say that the content, not just the star rating, but the actual content of going through and reading those has convinced them to make a purchase. So people's testimonials really make a difference because people really do go through, and that's insane. That's not just a few people. 82% of consumers overall said that they have gone through and read that content individually, and that's been what's convinced them to make the purchase or the decision. And then 93% of consumers say online reviews have made an impact on their purchase decisions, right? That's pretty obvious. So online reviews are incredibly powerful. Now, we've talked to death, right, about how important online reviews are and why you really need to get a handle on it. And if you're not, you're really going to be sorry. But which online review sites exactly are best for you and your firm? So to answer that question, we have to ask ourselves another question. What are your goals? Now, are you simply wanting to become more prominent online and make sure that you're found? Are you wanting to improve that local SEO like we talked about, so that the moment somebody has a micro moment, right, where they're ready to do something, that you're the one pulling up? Or let's say maybe you're doing fine with that, you have a lot of traffic, but you're having a hard time building trust and credibility with potential clients, where they might be really savvy, be doing a lot of research, and they go online and they find some random obscure Yellow Pages review of you that's terrible because of some bad experience, and they're not trusting you. So which sites do we want to focus on to help us with those things?
I think it all comes back down to the question we asked before. How are your clients finding you? Knowing what your sources are can play a big part in where we need to focus our efforts. I talked to some firms that say, yeah, we focus a lot on our Yelp page. We want to make sure we're showing up and doing everything great on Yelp. But in all actuality, only 5 to 10% of their cases or leads even are coming from Yelp. So a lot of that effort could be wasted. Obviously, we want to have a good spread, but we want to focus on a few different sites. Now, the obvious ones are Google and Facebook. Each have business listing options with review capabilities. Obviously, in legal, Avvo is a big one as well, or Better Business Bureau, right? Some of these are sites that you probably want to keep an eye on as well, but it all depends on how your clients are finding you and what case types you're dealing with, because for the average Joe who doesn't know much about legal but finds himself in the situation needing representation, they're probably not going to go to Avvo because they don't even know what that is. They're most likely going to go on Google. So it really just depends on where your clients are coming from and what practice areas you're dealing with, but make sure you're aware of that so you can know where to focus your efforts.
Yeah, as Tyler said, as a general rule of thumb, we really want to focus on Google first, because that's going to have such a huge impact on just improving your online presence, right? People just being able to find you. So Google, right, then Facebook, but then there are those industry-specific sites. So what I would recommend doing, like you said, is just doing a little bit of research. Go find your site. Go find your listings for your firm across anywhere you can find it online, right? Because first, right, let's make sure we're doing good on Google and everything like that. But then after that, Google is going to be really important for a number of reasons, right? Making sure you're getting a lot of reviews, very frequently with good content. And I'm like, that's probably the one you want to focus so much effort onto. But there are other sites out there, and it's not good to have a bad review. So what I would do then, after making sure you have a lot of good Google reviews, is to go onto the other sites and just make sure you at least have a good star rating across those, right? However many reviews it takes, because those other sites aren't going to affect local SEO nearly as much. So we've talked about how important online reviews are, right? We've talked about where you should be collecting those reviews, but how do you actually do it, right? How do you actually get more online reviews? Well, here we're going to go through those tips right now. And this is probably the things that you're going to want to write down. So here we go. Step number 1, determine the right timing of the invitation. And we should probably have a step before this, step 0, that you got to actually ask people, right? People don't do anything unless you ask them to do it. So you need to actually make sure you're inviting your clients to leave you a review, right? Now, when is the best timing of, I'll ask Tyler this, when should they be asking their clients to leave them a review? At what point in the process?
We found a few successful touch points here. Obviously, upon settlement or closing a case, when the client is the happiest in those situations, works very well. We do find that a lot of firms refer a lot of cases out to other firms or don't necessarily take the case, but provide a free consultation and point these folks in the right direction. So whether or not you retain a client, if they've interacted with your business, it may constitute it may be a great time to send them a review invite still, whether or not you actually retain them. Because some cases obviously could take over a year or multiple years to settle, whereas if someone comes in for an afternoon for consultation and walks out your door feeling better about their situation, could be a great opportunity to capitalize on that review as well. So it varies firm by firm, something you're going to have to try to figure out on your own, but those are a few options to look at.
Yeah, the legal industry is a little bit tricky on this one, but as a general rule of thumb across all businesses and everything like that, right, is you want to make sure you're doing this after a service has been performed. So we're making sure that they're happy, right, when you're asking them to do it, and that's top of mind, but before they forget about it. So before, for example, if this was like a tire shop, before they leave your tire shop, right? So if you have them in person, the case just closed, that would be an amazing time to ask them to leave your review. But again, you're going to have to do this on a case-by-case basis. All right, step number 2, you want to eliminate the barriers of entry, right? The barriers it's going to take for them to actually leave you an online review. So what's something that's hard for everyone to do? Well, going to the gym, I would say, is something that's really hard for people to do, right? Because there's a lot of barriers in between you, going to the gym or not. So, for example, I got married about 2 years ago. My fiance at the time, now my wife, noticed I was getting a little pudgy from a little too many Swedish chocolates that we were eating over in Europe. And she said, hey, I love you and all. We're still getting married, but, it would be really nice if you didn't look so pudgy in the pictures. So I said, fair enough. That's a little hurtful, but I'll take it. And I decided, I'm going to try to lose some weight for the wedding. And so what I do, what do you do to lose weight? You get up in the morning, you go to the gym before work, right? So I set my alarm, 5:55, whatever, and decided I was going to go to the gym the next morning. Well, I bet you can guess what happened the very next morning after I made this huge resolution to lose some weight for my wedding. I didn't wake up. I didn't get out of bed. I didn't go to the gym. Why? Because there was way too many barriers. It was way too hard to get out of bed and go to the gym. So what did I do, right? I look amazing right now, by the way. I know you can't see me, but what did I do to lose some weight? Well, I eliminated those barriers. The night before, I folded my clothes. I had them out ready to go, right? Rather than having to go, find them in the dark in the morning. I put my phone on the other side of the room so that when my alarm went off, I had to get out of bed to go get it, right? Eliminating that barrier of being nice and warm on my bed. I was forced to get out. And so I eliminated that barrier. And then, another barrier was trying to find my keys to go get in my car and drive to the gym. And even just driving to the gym was a barrier. So I also just decided I was going to start running a lot. And so I would just get out of bed, turn off my phone, put on those clothes that I already had ready the night before when I wasn't tired, and then go straight out the door. And it made it that much easier. So it's the same thing with getting reviews, right? You have to make it so ridiculously easy for your employees, maybe yourself in this case, if you don't have very many employees, to send an invitation to your clients. And you got to make it so easy on their end that they're not even having to think about this thing. All they're doing is clicking on the stars and maybe writing a sentence or two, so that they'll actually leave you that review. And we'll talk about a few specific things about that, right? in a second, but one barrier that specifically is like if somebody has to log into their Google account, that's a huge barrier. So how can you make sure that you take that away where they're not having to even think about that? So step number 3, you want to set the expectation of the review. Obviously, if you just randomly send them a text message or an email with a link to leave your review and you never said anything about it, or you said something about it at one point, but you never really told them much about it, it's not going to really help them because they don't know what to do with it.
And Rob brought up a good point earlier on when he mentioned capturing these moments while they're still in your office, right? So by just verbally giving them a warning saying, hey, this is how you'll get the invite. We're going to send you a text right now, or we're going to text you tomorrow morning, or something like that. It's huge to capitalize so that they expect it, right? And then obviously you got to pitch them on the value it'll add to you. Obviously you will have provided them a great service, and hopefully they've had a great experience. And so you need to point that out and say, hey, I hope that this has been valuable for you. What you could do for us is just simply leave us a quick review. Shouldn't take too long, a couple seconds, but it could add a lot of value for us. And so that could be a great way to capitalize on those as well. So make sure they're just aware of why it's important for you, but also just give them a warning. So it's a little bit of a less intrusive invitation if they know in advance that it's going to be coming.
Yeah, people are really empathetic sometimes. So, just letting them know that it's important to you, that they're more likely to do it. We've seen a lot of our customers have a lot more success. But as long as you're making sure you're covering just those 3 things right, the when, the how, and the why, you're going to be good. All right, step number 4, and I will say, honestly, this is probably one of the most important steps, but you want to send that invitation via text message. Now, why via text message? Well, first thing, let's do a little experiment right now. Let's have everyone pull out their cell phone. How many unread text messages do you have right now? Right, so I'll pull out my cell phone. I literally have 0 unread text messages, and I would bet most of you, and Tyler has 0 as well. I would bet most of you have probably even opened a text message during this presentation, right? Now, go look at your emails. How many unread emails have? So Tyler's actually pretty on top of things. He only has 2 unread emails. I have, I'm going to guess, 30. I have 45. Holy cow. Yeah. So that's a lot, right? Now, to further illustrate this, let's talk about my director. My director has 50,000 unread emails, and he loves to show it to me, and it gives me a heart attack every time. I can't handle it. I hate unopened things, right? I'm a little OCD about that. Now, if that's how many emails he has, or even I have, 40, how likely are your clients can be able to see and find that email that has the link to let them leave that review for you, right? Not very likely, but through text message, they are extremely likely to leave you that review. Now, text messages have an open rate of 99%. A good email rate, open rate would be 20%. Sometimes you can get the 30s if it's like an active, client, right? But not just to anyone else. And then 90% of those 99% of opened text messages are opened within the first 3 minutes. So it's really top of mind. It's so effective. Communicating via text message is something that we really advocate here at Podium, right? And there's some specific ways to do it. So Tyler, for lawyers, what would you say, right, about text, as far as texting their customers, like what's the best way to do that?
I think you hit the nail on the head, right? I mean, your average Joe is going to be a lot more likely to open a text, right? How are they communicating with their friends and family? My grandma every once in a while sends me emails, but she even is texting me nowadays, right? So texting is the way people are communicating. So whether or not it is with their business, my plumber, for example, the plumber example was brought up earlier today, but I had a little bit of plumbing work needed to be done a couple weeks ago. I texted the guy just because it's the most convenient way. I was at work. I couldn't just call random plumbers. I found one that was able to text, and that's how I communicate even with the businesses I deal with, right? So capturing these reviews are essential, and the way to do that most effectively, even in professional services, is through text.
All right, now here's step number 5, and this is a little bit of a plug for Podium, but honestly, it doesn't have to be podium, but it really is extremely useful to use a online review management tool rather than just trying to do this on your own. That's best for your law practice. And the reason why, like I said, those last 4 steps are all things you can do. You know, you can text your clients and you can send them a link to try to leave you a review, but there are going to be a lot of barriers that are going to be hard to get over if you don't have something that's automated, right? An online review platform like Podium, for example, makes it so if there are, we can identify which device they're on through the software to know if they're, for example, on an Android device. And that way, if they click on that link, we can send them straight to it where all they have to do is click on the stars. They don't have to find your business. They don't have to log in. They don't have to enter a password, right? All they do, click on the link and leave you a review, right? They don't have to do anything. It's so insanely easy. It also just makes it so much easier to manage on your side, right? There are hundreds, there are thousands of online review sites, right? How do you manage them all? Having a tool makes it so you can monitor those things, right? Make sure you can collect in the areas you need it is extremely essential too, right? And it's just going to make this whole process a lot easier. You don't have time to be caring about this, honestly. And so if you have this, and especially if you can integrate it with the software you already use, will make it so you don't even have to think about it, right? And you can make it work best for your customers.